2, you're on.
Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to Adventures in Truth podcast. Dr. Smith here with my esteemed colleagues, Jim Case, Timothy McCallum. We are live doing something for the first time as a threesome. Oh, Jim's waving at me, so there must be a signal of distress.
Yeah.
Is there a problem here?
No,
Just saying hi.
Me and I wave
hello,
at you.
hello.
Yeah.
Everybody's
I'm
just
Timothy.
waving.
See, we're on video now. They can see us waving. So
Yes.
All righty. So we are live I'm on the boat. Timothy is at his home, and Jim is not quite in his place yet.
Well, no, I'm actually in my place.
You are in your place?
Yes.
In your permanent place?
Yes.
Right on.
Yep. Just got here 3 hours ago.
Okay, so you're now. This is going to be where you're going to put roots down.
Yes.
Right on. Okay.
And where is that?
In Lakewood, Colorado.
Okay.
In an area called Green Mountain.
Sweet.
Which is right in the foothills. Backs up against an amazing bicycling, hiking park, and about a mile away from a couple of giant lakes, and about 20 minutes from downtown. And out front of the complex is a direct, perfect view of the entire downtown skyline of Denver.
Oh, good.
Absolutely incredible. Also, I'll be putting some pictures up here in a little while.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, it's cool.
So I had the chance to I was in, where the heck was I? Grand Junction, Colorado, a couple of weeks ago. Just did a little flyaway weekend kind of thing. And it was interesting because this is the fall and, it's football season and all. So everywhere around were all these Denver Bronco football team banners and posters and promotional kinds of things. And it was interesting because my girlfriend was like, what's up with all this Denver stuff? And she happens to be a Denver fan. I don't know why, but that's a whole different issue, and we won't get into that tonight. I'm kind of sorry for her about all that. But nevertheless, it was interesting that
Ouch.
we were there, and it happened, and Colorado is an awesome place. The people were friendly, green, just green. So I was flying a plane up there, and it's beautiful. That's all I have to say about Colorado. It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Maybe my opinion would change as the white stuff shows up, and because I live in San Diego, obviously, I kind of don't like the white stuff so much anymore. And I'm not talking about cocaine for any.
I was about to say.
I'm talking about real snow, like Mother Nature kind of stuff.
Okay.
But nevertheless, I'm happy for Jim and Michael, Jim's husband, for moving out there and starting a new adventure. It's really exciting to be a part of that and listen to you guys and watch you really dream big and just be willing to kind of go for it. And I'm really, really admire your bravery and courage to pull up stakes and go somewhere where you haven't been before and do this thing we call life and, dream big. You guys are doing it.
Yeah.
It's pretty extraordinary.
Really
I don't know if I told you, Timothy, I was sharing with Jeff that we spent a total of I think 4 hours, maybe 5 hours finding a place to live. We landed in Vail last Friday. Saturday morning we drove here to Lakewood. We went to Golden because I thought originally we would land in Golden, and when we got to Golden the energy was all not there. It didn't feel good. And so I thought, okay, we'll head over to Lakewood. So we started in Lakewood, and I said to Michael, we're just going to feel our way into this and see what we see. We'll go into the area that feels like it's where we want to be, and within an hour, driving up and down roads, I went, oh, let's go over there. And it was 5 minutes before the office opened, and we waited 20 minutes. The gal got there. They had a unit open. It was available for us. We put a deposit down and walked away and went and spent a week in Vail and had a blast.
Oh, nice.
Have heard nothing since then, or have only heard since then from people who talk about how much time and energy it takes to find a place to live in Denver. And we're like, really? Okay. Well,
nicely done.
4 hours. So it just added more to the excitement and the validation of just follow. When you follow your stuff, when you stay dialed in and do it, it just keeps showing up. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And thank you for that, Jeff. That's very nice. Thank you.
You are very welcome. Yeah, you guys are brave and bold, and you're doing it. So many people are afraid. I'm so much about one of my truths, since this is an adventure and truth podcast. If you want to break it down to the purest, most simplest, basic form, is we're in this energy of love or fear, and
Always. Yeah.
there's no
In between.
they're very
Hmm.
easy to differentiate and see
Hmm.
which energy are you in, and you can't do something like what you and Michael did without being in an energy of love. If you were in an energy of fear, you'd still be here. You'd still be doing the same old thing, the same old grind, the same old, same old. And you guys went for it. You rolled the dice, you pulled up stakes, and you did it. You left. You're gone.
We're gone.
Damn it, you're gone. Well, I'm saying that selfishly, of course, but yeah, it's going to be awesome to watch what unfolds for you guys in your new digs, in your new place.
Mm.
Super
Absolutely.
excited. All of
Yeah.
us. And Timothy had an amazing adventure as well for a few weeks there.
Yeah. I'm still a little jet lagged, so if I look a little goofy and my eyes aren't quite focused, that's why. I'm still kind of on Indonesian time, so
Yeah.
yeah. So about a week in Bali and then 2 weeks at sea, threading our way through the archipelago, east of Bali, about 2.5 hour flight, and scuba diving, about 4 dives a day, and
Wow.
private chefs and massage therapists, and it's. I'll look forward to sharing the photos and the stories with you guys. So yeah, it's good to be home. It's good to be home.
Well, Timothy, there's got to. I'm going to shift my camera for a moment. I'm sitting on my boat, and
The sun's got you.
one of the truths that I've learned is either we're moving or the sun is moving, one of the two. Which I can't control the motion of the earth or the sun. That's another one of my truths. But I can control where this camera is. So I'm going to move it so that I'm not looking straight into the sun.
Oh,
Give me just a moment to reposition this. I think that should work well enough. But
sounds like
anyway,
a.
I would love to hear just, what are some of your, I went and had this experience, and what were some of your truths about diving, being on a boat, being in a part of the world you haven't been before? What did you learn? What did you notice?
Man, so much about what was going on with the diving. That was a little nerve wracking because I hadn't done it before, and I was learning literally swimming with sharks. So what I was learning is just the opportunity to, like you're saying, live large, push into my fears a little bit, get situated to see what's going on with my inner narrative about seasickness and trusting equipment 100 feet under under the sea. It was, I felt like it was a big milestone for me, and I absolutely was astounded by the Balinese people. Just such sweethearts, just really, really good, tender. There's not even little microaggressions in all the crowds that I was around. I think there was 5.3 million people on Bali because there was the earthquakes that had happened there on Lombok. And a lot of those tourists came over and fled, and it was prime tourist season. So there's about a million or two more people than there normally is. So that was uh, a little discombobulating. The people that I was traveling with, I realized that I get to create my own experience and go do exactly what I want to do, and I don't need anybody else or take care. It was really nice to not take care of anybody else but my desires in that. So I I got a chance to really explore Bali in ways, by myself with a couple of monks that I know from Tahiti, a guy that I studied with many years ago. Um, anyway, I think the truths are still settling in, but I really love the fact that there's so many beautiful souls on this planet, and that there's a culture out there that's not steeped in a lot of microaggression. That was a big truth for me, is that we live in a society where there's a lot of density and just a lot of people in their heads and a lot of little little slights and microaggressions happening. And so anyway, I'll come back to that. I'll think a little bit more about some of those truths. But in this moment, it was just how grateful I am that I get to be alive and I get to see these things. And my clients took care of everything for me. And so just to be in my truth, that I'm affecting people in a way that they're willing to honor me with something so, grandiose as just like a fully, uh, 20 people in service to 8 of us on this boat. And, I wanted for nothing, and I don't know. It was just a really, really beautiful time. Great food, great waters, great fish. I noticed that I was going through a little more air when I was around giant things like giant manta ray, when I was around big sharks. You were such lumbering oafs in the water, no matter how fast we can swim. Those guys are bajillions of years old, and they're just so efficient at eating. And so I just soaked it all up, and to be in a big school of fish and just swimming with them and looking at their colors and looking at what they've been doing for millions of years is just, I don't know. It really got me into a greater simplicity and greater appreciation for my world. So, like I said, I'll circle back.
So you went into a world that wasn't your world, and that we're talking about the undersea world.
Yes, sir.
Cousteau, now
Yeah.
Timothy McCallum, right? So
yeah.
you got to go down under that place that we don't normally go and spend some time under there and see it and experience it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
cool.
And it was a little bit of a gut check. And it made me think, too, about I got the right kind of medication dialed in. I didn't get sick. I stayed ahead of that. And so I would be open for some trips with you sometime. So I might be able to do one of those trips to Catalina one of these days. So,
Right on. Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
It's been this. Speaking of the truths that show up, I had a very powerful experience of having to own some stuff, because there was a day there where Michael and I were really at each other. I mean, in a way that we'd never ever in 10 years have never been at each other. And after about a day of it, we're trying to sift and sort and trying to figure it out, and finally realizing that part of the truth of it was I had determined that since I set this thing in motion, that he shouldn't feel any discomfort, and that if he did, I was failing. And so he was going through some struggles, and I was being an ass, and so it was just compounding. But it's so interesting, because when we finally were able to sit and just talk through it, and I kept going in, and like, what is going on? And it became really clear that all of a sudden I was realizing how much I was feeling like a failure because he wasn't in a good place. And as soon as I put words to it, I went, well, that's absolutely nuts. Because as soon as he said yes, it's on him.
Right.
That's not on me. And it dissipated all the energy. It took all of the intensity out of it, and it gave us back our spaces to walk this together. Like we got to go out that night, and it felt like me and Mike again. You know what I mean?
So put that in a truth statement. The truth is, I'm not responsible for Michael's well-being.
I'm not responsible for Michael's anything.
Okay.
But the truth is,
I love it.
I am responsible to the degree that the choices at the point, let's say, so I'm responsible up to the point that he makes a decision. And once he makes a decision, then it becomes about his energy and not about my energy.
Right.
And that's been part of our evolution in this process is being able to, at different junctures over the last few weeks, we've had conversations where I would ask him about how he was feeling, and he would talk about my feelings. And I'm like, no, you can't talk about, it's not about my feelings. It's about how are you feeling, and owning what's going on for you, because you've chosen to participate. So because you've chosen to participate, you now have to take responsibility for your own stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And The truth is, I don't and should not, and I'm not responsible for where he goes with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It does. So, is there another truth? There's probably 10 truth statements in here, perhaps.
Yeah.
The truth is, I can be okay. I can be content, regardless of however Michael is, however Azine is, however Timothy's love life special person is.
Yep.
We can still be okay, content, stable, in an energy of love, regardless. We can
Right.
choose that.
Yeah.
And that's look at what I'm doing right now. This is one of those truth moments where it's huge. That's what we're here to do.
Yeah.
And we have to love the people that show up for us
Yep.
in that other place
Mm-hmm.
so that we can learn that I can do this.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
I can do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for not being amazing in this moment, because it's easy to be amazing when everybody else is amazing.
Right.
It's not easy to be amazing when nobody else is being amazing.
Absolutely.
And that's the truth.
Or so we think.
Yeah.
Or so we think.
I
Yeah,
have
because
a.
it stirs up. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, buddy. Go ahead.
No, and I was just going to say that it's so interesting how it's almost automatic that, especially with a significant other, that if the desire is to love unconditionally, if they're not being in a place that looks like they're being loved unconditionally, and actually, even as I say that thought, I recognize the flaw in the thought. Because what does it look like to be loved unconditionally? How would I know what that looks like to him? I don't. I'm not in his experience. But it's not, I can love unconditionally and recognize that the individual is having their process. I can support them. I can love them. And it doesn't have to drag me into the dirt at the
Yeah.
same time.
Yeah.
And vice versa. That's the other challenge, is if I'm feeling in the dirt, it's really important for me to find the choice of love in the circumstance, because otherwise I start to pull his energy. And if he's not strong
Exactly.
enough, he's going to get sucked into my little whirlwind.
Yeah.
You know?
I have a similar story, but I've got a family member, a brother, who's quite ill, and at various times he'll pull me in close, and then he gets a little political, and he'll push away and involve other people, and just not understanding how I live my life. And I'm all fine with that. But he started reaching out a little bit recently, and there was a little bit of my ego that was keeping score about how lopsided this thing is, and how much I've shown up, what I've done, and, ways that I've held space and used my emotional intelligence to keep things from getting haywire. And the moment that I realized that that I had any judgment and that I was keeping any kind of score at all, I just realized I'm absolutely full of crap right now. I am so in my ego, because if I'm keeping any score, and if I have any judgment, then that's my work. And if I'm just a loving, conscious, truthful being, then I'm going to show up and love this man because I can, and because he's breathing, and because I'm breathing. And this is a precious day in life, and it's all fleeting, and it's a blink of an eye how quickly it goes. And it was a really nice feeling just to go, I could write volumes about how things are messed up, and how I wish things were different and everything. Or I can just stop, be grateful for what I have, and be grateful that I can be unconditional the way that I know how to be, and just love this man while he's here, and just focus on that, and just let myself practice what I preach, and just be in a beautiful space. And that felt really good for me. It felt really nice to settle into that truth, just going, come on, Timmy, you're talking a good game, but that's all ego, and just stop that. Be in your heart. So I can really, and when we're in our heart, when we're truly in our heart, everything seems to flow, and that creates an inspiration and a compassion and an awareness that can help lift other people that might be in their own doldrums. We start shining our light. We start focusing on what's true as far as love and pure potentiality, and then off we go. And next thing you know, people that were really upset and all bogged down have a brand new way of being with themselves and being with the relationship. And anyway, that was a big truth for me, getting
Awesome.
really, and I think that part of the mastery for myself in being a master, it'll always be a practice, but it is recognizing that sooner and sooner and sooner when I've got any ego that's playing into any conversation. And if I'm not just pure love, because I'm happiest when I'm just pure love.
Mm-hmm.
And if I've got any other story, any other narrative going, then I'm, especially if it's ancient, if it's stuff that's not in this moment, that's ego, and that brings us down, and that brings chemicals into my body that I don't necessarily need to be processing when I could just be processing love. It's always a choice. Back to your fear and love, Jeff. That's really what it all boils down to.
And the other part to me that's interesting is that it doesn't obviate or doesn't eliminate the potential or possibility of feeling like crap.
True.
I mean, because I
Those days come. Those days do happen.
Because it's one of those things where, for me, the reality of this work, the reality of what we're walking through, is all of that contrast is absolutely necessary. Because if I wasn't feeling those intensely feelings through the process, it wouldn't, because of where I am in my life, it wouldn't force me to stop and say, time out. This is not the me I want to present to the world. This is not why am I here? What do I need? What can I do to shift this? Because I know that if I'm making it somebody else's fault, I'm in the wrong ballpark.
It's not your highest choice. It's
right.
not our highest choice. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's cool to it's getting comfortable with that discomfort. Not that I want to live there, but being comfortable knowing that the discomfort is there because it's propelling me to some new understanding, to some new depth of clarity about my experience in my relationships, whatever they are, as opposed to it all being, rainbows and unicorns 24/7. That happens when we go. That happens when we go. Rainbows and unicorns happen after the body. I don't know if that's true.
Possibly. I know. It's a nice hope. It's a nice hope.
I'm imagining Jim riding on a unicorn right now.
I'm not.
Oh, hell yeah. A big old muscly unicorn? Yeah.
Going straight toward a big, beautiful rainbow.
That's right. Because I don't care if it's a unicorn or a horse. Horses are wonderfully powerful and amazing, and
they really are. Yeah.
So who cares if it's white and has a rainbow horn coming out of its head? I'm good with that. It's my special horse.
So Timothy was talking about ego a few moments ago, and as I've come to understand the purpose of ego, ego allows us to survive. It's a survival energy mechanism, program, mindset that is all about the scarcity of resources.
Right.
The belief that there's not enough for everybody and I've got to get mine and I've got to do whatever it takes to contain mine, get mine, protect mine.
Mm-hmm.
It's fantastic if we're in a true crisis.
Survival
mode, but I mean, how long has it been?
Yeah.
Really? I mean, even right now with, one of the current events that's taking place right now on the East Coast is Hurricane Florence, and having provided resources to, I remember when Hurricane Andrew took place, I flew water and generators from North Carolina down to Florida on a C-130, and it was just amazing to see palm trees sticking through the sides of buildings that had been lifted up out of the ground and propelled like toothpicks sticking through the side of a building. It's like, wow, Mother Nature is really pissed off and really powerful. But even in this environment of Hurricane Florence, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of people brandishing weapons and running around stealing and murdering each other. It's kind of like even in a crisis situation in our time and place in society, we're kind of still like oriented toward taking care of each other and looking out for each other and sharing. And it's kind of like those circumstances bring out the best in us, which really isn't about ego.
Right.
So although, yes, ego still exists within us, it's a wonderful place to be, as to constantly be asking yourself, how much of what I'm doing right now is about my ego?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's interesting to me, Jeff, your perception of that, because I would, from the way I view the world, I would see that as the circumstance actually causing or helping to create the state shift that takes people out of that lower negative ego place. And some don't. Some stay there. I mean, if you listen to the news about this whole thing, they talked every single time I saw on the news, they were talking about the fact that had been, that those areas across that whole, where the hurricane is, was a mandatory evacuation zone. And all of the people who chose not to mandatory evacuate, who are now calling in the middle of the storm for help because they're about to die because they didn't bother to listen to the mandatory evacuation, that's
Right.
ego.
Right.
That's ego. But the people that are helping, the people who have flown from all over the country and all over the world to offer aid, have shifted, have gone into that state of love, have gone into that state of these people need support, even if they're too stupid to pay attention to what has been placed in front of them.
Yeah.
There's still, it goes beyond that to this bigger picture of state shift, to being in that state of love and saying, these people deserve help regardless. They need to be saved. They need to be picked up. Part of me, even for me, part of it goes into, heck with them. They didn't want to pay attention, but that's not how it's approached, and that's not the way people are dealing with it, and that's extraordinary to me. I started writing a second book about ego, and one of the things that came through very clearly was about ego being a function of the fact that we have a physical body, and that the ego is a consciousness born of being a physical being, and its only job is to take care of this thing and keep it on the planet. That's all its job is. So everything it does from that perspective, and everything it's groomed to is based on what we choose to give it responsibility for. And I think we've talked about this before, where we tend to, as individuals, we tend to give the keys to the kingdom to the 8-year-old and say, have a good time. Well, the 8-year-old wasn't designed to take care of the world. It was designed to take care of the body, And so I love the perspective, because it really makes a lot of sense. When you get the ego out of the realm of its job, it can't function properly.
Yeah. Well, I like that, because in order for us to have this experience, we do have to have a body.
Yes.
And so therefore the ego is necessary to take care of the body.
Yeah.
Keep you on the planet. Yep. And uses the 5 senses.
And so, Jeff, do you have any wisdom for those of us that are trying to figure out the right kind of balance? How do we know when we need to be checking in with our ego? When can we start getting a little sense? Are there indicators in the body? Are there sensations when we are a little bit out of balance with that wisdom, right?
Yep. I love the great question and hopefully simple answer. We're either in a state of content or discontent.
Mm-hmm.
And content is spirit, discontent is ego. Spirit never sees a problem.
Right.
Even like right now, the people that are standing on the rooftops going, I was too dumb to leave when they told me to leave my house, and the hurricane's here now, and my ego said, I can stay. I'm strong. It will be okay.
Right.
It was downgraded. It's only a category 2 now, so I don't have to worry about it. That was the big justification.
And maybe they came here just for that experience, which is fine. There's value to that too. They came, maybe their sole experience to be on the planet at this time in history was just to be in this hurricane, to be on the rooftop and have somebody. And this is kind of interesting too, because even though Jim said that the reason that people are responding is out of love, that can also be out of ego too. Look at me, I'm Superman. I can respond. I can drive a boat. I can do all this stuff, and
True.
I can rappel in with a helicopter, and I can save you. I'm laughing at myself right now. I'm sorry.
Another truth bubble just went boop.
Poof.
Whoa.
So I don't know if that's love or ego, but and I don't know that we need to know. But
Probably different for every circumstance.
yeah, to answer Timothy's question though, the internal state is either I'm in a state of being content or discontent. And ego thrives in a state of discontent. It will rise.
Yes, it does.
It will take from someone else in order to preserve my life.
Yeah.
You know, there's these, have you guys heard of the Lilo, Philo, first on, last to leave, first, last.
FIFO. First in, first out.
But there's like 5 or 6 of them. But it's like first in, last out. It's all these kinds of these concepts. Those are all ego driven. So like you think about, getting out of I'm the first off the ship that's getting ready to sink. Who cares about everybody else? I got off. That's ego. Whereas the person who is realizing the ship is sinking and they're scrambling to help everybody else get the life jackets on and get into the lifeboats, and they're not concerned about their own life, that's not ego. That's like everybody else is, I want to get everybody else off. And if I peril, okay, that's fine. That's kind of more of a spirit kind of a thing. And we call those heroes. I don't know. It's a complex question, Timothy. Why are you asking these complex questions?
I know. Well, how's the weather there in the harbor there?
It's horrible.
Yeah, it looks like it. It looks
horrible.
Horrific. It looks absolutely horrific. Yeah. And you were talking a little bit about how the ego thrives in negativity. And I find it fascinating the more I'm around people who are taking a look at their negativity, how sneaky it is. Even when they start making some leaps and bounds and having a greater understanding of whatever spirit's trying to reveal, whatever the greater good is within, there's this addiction and I don't mean like they're consciously choosing it, but I've been reading how there are spindles of neurons that kind of thrive and get really strong toward whatever the predominant thinking is. And if people have been in negativity for a really long time, there are spindles of how our brains work that's the cattle trail. That's the easy place to go. And I think people, myself included, I had some chaos growing up, and I was really uncomfortable when there wasn't a certain amount of chaos. If I dated someone that was kind of simple and there wasn't some drama and some chemicals being released quite enough, then I would sabotage that. That was something I really needed to take a look at. And as I get a little bit clearer in that mapping and I'm working with other people, I'm astounded at how difficult it is for people to recognize how much of an invitation they're putting out to have greater and greater negativity in their life. And I just wonder if that's just like an insatiable feed of the ego just wanting more and more and more, because I guess it's defining itself because it gets to have the conversation of victimization, which is a huge one, in the middle of all of that. And so, do you have any thoughts on?
I have something to say.
Get it.
I
Say
got
it, Jimmy.
So I think what you're saying is so right on, Timothy, in that we train that process. But the thing about the ego that's so extraordinary is that the ego is driven on what is called reality. So because reality is driven off of the 5 senses, so whatever it can see, taste, touch. So what I have experienced, especially through this process that I have found absolutely fascinating, is what changes, the question that you were asking, what changes is consciousness. What changes is awareness, meaning the ego, at least there may be some point in the future where my ego will go away, but I don't think so, at least not thus far in my experience.
Not as long as you have a body.
Exactly.
Right.
So that noise goes on all the time. The reason that we have tools like meditation and state shifting and the things that we talk about is those are the things that allow us to notice, be the observer, notice what's happening on one end of the spectrum, and then making decisions consciously to do something else or something different. Mm-hmm. the place where people get hung up is that in many training, in many of the teachings that go forward, they talk about how you have to be aware of your thoughts and you have to be conscious of your thoughts and you have to watch your thoughts and you have to control your thoughts. And I'm actually going to say that's a lot of hooey in some regard because you can't. It's a never-ending stream of crap that's just running 24/7. What you can do is you can go into a different state. You can shift into the observer and you can watch it.
Absolutely.
You can see it happening and you can say, wow, that doesn't serve anything. But that's when you choose the state of love for your own beingness. Right? So when you choose the state of love for your own beingness, you now have a different perspective about how you approach all of it. And then when you're in the moment of it, you can make a conscious decision and go, wow, look at my ego is going off the rails right now. And I don't tend to go there because I don't want to identify it in that fashion. I just watch the duality go on and say, yeah, that side of what you're doing right now doesn't feel very good. I'm making a different choice. Sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
So I was just thinking about sitting in front of a TV with a remote in my hand and knowing that there's like 1,000 different channels I could tune into. And it's my choice which programming I'm watching. It's my choice.
What frequency?
And I could have my favorites. I could have my genre. I could have my typical, I've been watching this kind of stuff for however old I am. Or I can watch something that actually feels good.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, does it amaze you guys how many CSI versions there are? Or how many housewives of whatever city there are? Or hospital shows or cop shows. I mean, it's just like, my gosh, there's at least 50 just within those 3 or 4 different categories. And we get to make choices of, do I want to tune into that or not? So that's what thoughts are. Thoughts are just like TV stations, and we get to choose which one we want to watch.
100% agree. And back to a point that you were making, Jimbo, about how there's kind of this perpetual stream of crud coming through. I agree with that. But I do think that the more we are aware and we are in that, we make that decision to be the conscious observer of what's going on. For me personally, I've noticed that stream the static is less and less and less. And, and so when it does show up, when that static and that sabotage and that scarcity and fear starts to happen, it's like almost like after you've done a cleanse, you haven't had any bad food for 2 weeks and, just really super clean. You're not craving a greasy pork chop at the end of that, you want an organic strawberry. Like your mitochondria are craving something that's just full of life and positivity and something that's going to give it some fuel.
I will have to say, though, that I would say that only occurs if you are in alignment with the energy of the cleanse and that you're in the state that's where your focus is. Because I've done both ends of it. I've come out of cleanses going, where's my steak? I've had that.
Yeah. Well, I haven't had that experience, so I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. But I think it's about the awareness that we can get into, seems to make the biggest difference in who I enjoy being around the most. And a lot of really lovely, sweet, awesome people haven't quite spent time thinking about this particular thing, and they don't realize that they're just bringing negativity into a moment, because I think that was a way that we used to bond or something. I think there's a reason why so many of us are drawn to being in a little state of gossip or sharing I think there's something about that chemical connection that, I don't know, that we're drawn to. But I enjoy asking people when they're in the middle of something that I know where they're going. And I'll just say, if I'm starting to feel the energy of their, vampire spiritual suck, I'll just say, sweetheart, what is the intention in telling me this right now? Yeah. And it's really interesting. That question can be really a beautiful way for someone to go, gosh, why am I sharing this with you? And I hang out with those people. But there are people who can get very, very, very triggered because that ego starts getting threatened because you're kind of dipping into their story. You're getting into their vault, into their comfort of what they've been, and they're sharing negativity that you can't do anything about, that they can't do anything about, but they're on the loop, and challenging that is I found to be a very effective tool at just pumping the brakes with people. Because I read somewhere where we have about 18 seconds to disengage from someone that's in a very negative state that's pulling us that's pulling us in, and they may not mean to do that. And I think when I was a lifeguard 100 years ago, we learned that all these different ways to save people, and that some people were really grateful that you'd show up, and other people would be in a crazy panic and try to use you as a flotation device. And I remember reading about a grandfather who fell in the water fishing with his grandkids, and they all went in to save him, and he drowned 5 of his grandkids. And he, can you imagine? He loved these kids more than anything, but in his state and his desire to survive, that part of him just saw these things that could float. I mean, it's really, I know that's a bit of an extreme example, but I think there's a lot of people drowning in various ways, and there's ways that we kind of can get on top of other people to get a little bit of a rise that may not be the best thing. I don't know. What do you guys think?
That's ego.
Yeah.
I think that there's an analogy that I love about energy that they use with the law of attraction stuff, that the basis of your energy is like a cork that floats on the water. And when you allow your vibration to be natural, when it's in state, you float. When you decide to go into negative or ego, you're pushing the cork under the water. But if you stop pushing the cork under the water, the cork will float. It's our willingness to push the cork and hold it underwater that causes the problem. And if we just release the cork will naturally go back to its position floating in the water.
And I think one of the great caveats to that is that we do that unconsciously. I think we're not taught to know when we're holding that cork under. You know,
we're not. Right. That's called negative emotion.
Yeah.
It is.
In our society, in our culture thrives on it. And I'm not saying that no one knows about that, because people do know about they do a lot of work, but most people don't understand what it is that's holding the cork down. And it takes a lot of energy to stay on top of that cork. It really does. Energy that could be used for something much more inspired and graceful and loving.
Yes, it takes a lot of energy to hold the cork down. Yeah. Yeah, because it's buoyant. It's naturally buoyant. So it's that story about the killing the grandkids thing is so interesting, because even the kids didn't apparently have enough awareness yet to go, I'm not sacrificing myself for a person for this thing that's happening that is not desiring change. I mean, I'm making it a little more, what's the word I want? Clinical in a sense, because that could be a hugely emotionally charged event. But to me, that's the whole cork thing. You can't help the guy who doesn't want to be helped. So if he's drowning and he's not being able to be helped by 5 people trying to help him, he doesn't want help.
Well, he's not. Yeah, I don't think it. And I understand what you're saying, but I think that it's just such an extreme moment of that edge of drowning and survival where I don't think he's thinking, you know what, I'm going to use Sally as a cork right now to keep me afloat. I think it was just his instincts to be alive, the way people move and shake, and the way people without a visual cortex in a battle injury could navigate through very precarious battlefields. There's some pretty interesting studies about that. But I think that there's some instinctual things that can happen that aren't really necessarily about a cognitive moment of this is what I'm doing and this is why I'm doing. I think it was just trying to stay afloat. And I think that's what gets into a little bit of the not to get too dark and deep, but I think that's what is the precipice for a lot of murder suicide, is that people are just right there and they're drowning. And anyway, that's a whole other thing. I'm not conflating.
I don't think the level of negativity necessarily makes it more complicated. I think that's all story and fluff and bullshit that doesn't really mean anything. It's just what happened. And that's my opinion. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I mean,
About
for me,
the
that's the way I
granddad
see it.
and the grandkids?
Any circumstances of that matter. You know, it seems that when you break it down, it still comes down to core stuff. You know, and yeah, there may be history, there may be habits, there may be all that stuff involved, but ultimately, it still comes down to choices and decisions, and,
Sure.
and do I get conscious or not conscious, and because this vessel is still under my control to some degree. You know, when I was going through this in the move, and when I had, as Jeff and I were talking about last week, the situation with my family that got way out of hand, I was in a state of out of control that I had not experienced in, if I could remember one, I'm not sure I can, but closely was at least 20 years ago, easily 20 years ago, that I felt that intensity, that I felt that just
Trigger.
out of control.
Trigger.
I could feel it. Okay, do you want to call it whatever?
Okay.
I called it out of control. But the difference being that there were many moments in that intensity that I made bad decisions, but I was aware that I was making a bad decision. I was aware that I decided to be mean. I was aware that I decided to be a dick. I was aware of it, but it took me a while to step back from it enough to stop and go, I don't like how this feels, but I'm not going to engage that even though it feels like crap. I'm going to sit in feeling like crap until I figure out how do I get to shift my space. Does that, you know what I mean? I'd realize when you're in the middle of a lake drowning that that's not necessarily going to be your option.
Yeah.
But the point being that it's all consciousness. So there's no point in the process that it isn't about consciousness or about how we use our energy.
Mm-hmm.
You know? But Jeffrey's been interestingly quiet about all of this, so I guess he's getting ready to drop some truth bombs on us.
Oh, truth bomb! I love it. Well, I was thinking about the grandfather-grandkids thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because I keep going back to this, I'm here on the planet to learn to love myself, even though I drowned my 5 grandkids. That perhaps those agreements were made in advance
Elsewhere.
here. Mm-hmm. And that all 5 grandkids were like, yeah, sure, you can drown me. I don't care. You know, it's just one of 1,000 times I've been here. So, you know, no big deal.
Yeah.
But, you know, in the experience, because what would it be like to be the grandfather after the fact where
oh my gosh. How do you pick up those pieces? My goodness. Yeah.
Wouldn't that be quite an amazing challenge to say, you know, am I still worthy of being on the planet? Do I have any redeemable values and any ability to love myself? So yeah, in one extreme, pure ego in the whole survival thing, ego is amazing.
Yeah.
It will take from anybody else to keep itself going, and that's a great example.
Yes, it is.
And after the fact, where the crisis is over, and you have to then, you know, shift back into this duality of ego and spirit, and spirit's like, wow, what did you do? That's tough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, see, that's interesting too, Jeffrey, because I really wonder if the spirit actually even goes there. I don't know that it's that is sort of, to me, the religious version of spirit, that there is judgment assessed, or there is I don't think that's the case. I think that everything is on the playing field, and it's all about what we choose to experience or not experience. And because otherwise that soul part of us could not maintain unconditional. That soul aspect would not be unconditional love if it was assessing everything we did and determining good, bad, or indifferent. That's a function of the ego. That is not a function of the spirit or the soul or God or whatever you want to call it, the universe, whatever.
So you said a lot there, Jim, so go. Can you go back and do that one more time, please?
Okay. So the basis of some of the stuff we talked about is this idea of unconditional love. Well, if spirit is determining that choice was a good, bad, or indifferent, then it wasn't spirit that made the choice. The soul is here to support whatever it is we choose to do in this environment. Whatever it is, it doesn't have a viewpoint about it one way or the other. We do. The ego does. Other people do. But the soul is consistent in its never-ending love of who we are and what we bring to this planet. So if the individual, say the grandfather, can find a way to shift state, to find a way to get back to that state of unconditional love, he can then learn and understand what might have unfolded in that circumstance. But if he can't get out of the state of judgment, it's unlikely that he'll ever learn anything about it, because he'll never get out of the state of judgment. He'll never get out of the state of that cyclical ego abusing kind of experience. I went off on a tangent, but
I think we're saying the same thing, because the point would be to not judge yourself,
right,
and realize that if I'm going to practice unconditional love, I have to practice that with myself also. Even though I drowned my 5 grandkids, I'm still going to unconditionally love myself.
Can you imagine trying to hoe that road? Goodness gracious.
And what was this is the amazing part of why we all show up here on the planet. We have no idea why that man came on the planet, and he may have come on the planet to do that, like you were saying, Jeff. He may have come to this planet specifically to create that experience, because that experience was desired in the bigger scheme of things, of showing the stark contrast between even to the degree that you could supposedly kill your grandkids, there is love somewhere. There is love in that space. There was love in them in some degree that they sacrificed themselves for that.
Exactly.
So there's love all throughout it, but what happens is that we get compartmentalized or focused so intently on whatever all of the ego, moral, right, wrong, bad, good, punishment, God, devil, Satan, hell, all of that stuff becomes all of the talk. It becomes the dialogue of that event, instead of coming back to love, coming back to love, coming back to love. And to Timothy's point, I can't imagine that wouldn't be really hard.
Yeah. I want to say something real quick. I'm almost out of juice on my phone. I'll be on my computer for our next incantations. But if I just happen to go blank, that's because I've got a couple of notices that I'm just about out of juice. So,
okay.
But let's keep going as long as I'll be here as long as I can be. But I just want to let you know that
we're coming up on an hour.
Okay.
Jeff, I know, has guests, and we can
Jeff's
continue.
going fishing.
Whatever.
Where are you going to go into Mexico, bud?
Just off Ensenada.
Okay. Nice. Will you get into town at all and get a bite to eat or anything while you're down there?
No, we're out at sea the whole time.
Okay.
There's a little device you can buy to put in your phone that you can put your headphones in and charge at the same time if you're using the same port or whatever.
Okay.
An extension cord and a plug would do the same thing.
It doesn't work that way with iPhone 7s. You can't do both at the same time. You got to have an adapter. You have an adapter.
Yeah, it's called a dongle.
Yeah, it's funny that they call it a dongle, but yeah. You got to go get yourself a dongle.
Yeah.
Timmy needs a dongle. Timmy.
Well, we'll see about all that. It's good to see your faces, gentlemen, and I like this format. It's my first time doing a video at all, so I'm enjoying this format, and I liked what went down today.
So I got a little teaser for next time.
Yes, sir.
Been reading this book called the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. You guys ever heard of that?
No.
Okay. So if you just Wikipedia it, I'm pretty sure it will spark your interest.
One more time?
It's called the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. Thoth.
Wow.
Okay. So it's a thing. You know, particularly because Wikipedia says so.
Yeah. No.
So these emerald tablets are 38,000 years old, and there's been many different religions that have been born from the information that's on these tablets, including Christianity. So I'm just going to put that out there as a little teaser.
Sweet.
When I was reading this book and going through it, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's the Bible. This is where the Bible came from.
Wow.
So here's an archaeological artifact that's a real thing that has, it was not obviously written in the King James Version. It's been translated into the King James Version. But the origins of the Bible, in my opinion, of which I'm willing to be wrong, but I'm probably not because I've read this book. And all kinds of other things are kind of like pointing in the same direction, that it looks like you'll recognize it. If you dive into this thing at all, you'll recognize, oh my gosh, these are the concepts and the precepts that the Holy Bible was written from, and they have their origins from this other document, artifact, that's 38,000 years old. Wow. And again, we're, like trying to push into truth.
And this is before the Anunnaki and the Sumerian? Does it have anything to... Oh, wow.
Yeah. It way predates that.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. That's exciting.
If you guys will
do a little research
about that, do a little research, and then when we gather again next, we might push into that a little bit.
I don't know if you heard me, so I'm going to say it again. Jeff, text that, please.
I shall.
Thank you.
And good luck on your fishing, buddy. Be safe.
Yes.
Have fun. Yeah.
We shall.
Yeah.
We shall indeed. It's good camaraderie. It's a good time out in nature.
Indeed. Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool.
Great to see you guys. Great conversation again, even though a shorter version of our conversation, but I think we could have gone on for quite a while again.
Indeed. And enjoy your getting settled in your new digs, man.
I am. I'm excited about it. Just wanted to put out there for those of you watching us and listening to us, please go to our Facebook page and like us and check out our videos there. And you can also go to our YouTube page and subscribe. We'd love to see more of you there and hear your comments and interact with us. We'll somewhere down the line here very soon, we'll be doing some Facebook Live and YouTube Live, which will get us to interact. But as we're building our audience, we'd love to hear from you and see you. So thank you guys for being here and love hanging out and having these conversations.
Right on, man. Share the adventure.
Share the adventure. All right.
Right on.
Good night, guys.
Good night, y'all. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Lots of love to you.
Bye-bye.